So welcome to Spiritz Studio Talk Show. I am Neeraj Kumar.
And I am Shalini Kumar.
So we are faced with very difficult times, and the future is so uncertain. People are losing jobs, salaries are being cut, and consumers' mind space is not at the right place. Such times must have thrown different and most difficult challenges for the companies and for the marketers. Uh, but it's also often said that such adversities often offer some opportunities as well. So we are going to dwell upon such critical issues today.
And actually, we needed to touch upon some social issues with a top industry professional. And as that would have it, MD of Beam Suntory, Mr. Neeraj Kumar, has joined us today on the show. Welcome, Neeraj.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, Vishen, and congratulations on your long innings. 11 is a good number, and onwards and upwards from here for you. Good luck.
Thanks a lot. It would not have been possible without two people's support.
Absolutely, especially yours.
Thank you.
So, let me start with my first question. How has been the past few months for your company? And how did you manage to keep your brands relevant during these 3-4 months?
Yeah. So as every category and every service or every business is finding, the whole COVID impact has been an evolving impact. We first had to deal with safety and wellness, and both in terms of protecting people and their families, and then later it became more about how do you keep engagement alive and provide a bit of a work-life balance with all of the number of remote engagement ideas, etc., which were all good, but it also took a lot of time. From a business perspective, we've been looking at how do big brands and long-standing brands deal with such disruptions. And I think the good news is, as you were alluding to, what is an adversity if you don't find an opportunity? I think that is generally the principle in which long-standing businesses continue to be resilient. As you know, Jim Beam is 225 years old. It's a brand which was founded in 1795 by some very resilient blenders back then. That brand has gone through a fair degree of different types of disruptions, including dealing with the prohibition era of the United States, distillery issues, or other issues. Teachers, on the other hand, which is our big brand in India, was founded in 1830 and again has gone through its own share of disruptions. The Japanese whiskeys, which we represent, they've been around for 100 years and they've gone through their own very difficult or very different types of disruptions. So I think when a disruption occurs, whether it's extraneous, whether it's health and safety led or political or whichever way you look at it, I think brands naturally find themselves to be more agile. They need to get fundamentally trusted more by consumers, and that's what we've been focused on. How do we keep our engagement with our consumers, with our customers? We've had multiple sessions with our valued key account customers or distributors, etc. Our brands have been talking remotely in a way to our consumers so that they are able to still find relevance with the brands we have. We had launched a very powerhouse portfolio in December with Yamazaki and Hibiki, and then one of our biggest priority, which is Oaksmith Indian whiskey. And those brands had to be nurtured in a different way because they were new in the market. And happy to state that despite all of the disruptions, our teams have been exceedingly focused on getting the brands out in front of customers and consumers. We've done a fair bit of engagement initiatives with our people, trying to be very empathetic. Globally, Beam Suntory has been a very progressive employer. Right in the beginning of the pandemic, we had said that we will continue to be offering flexibility to our colleagues around the world and in India. We work now Fridays, all Fridays from home. We've said if people are not comfortable, or if the public transport or any other means of transport is not considered safe by them, they can choose to be working from home through the week, even if the offices are open. So I think there's been a bunch of great initiatives from a people wellness safety protocol perspective. Now, when you look back in terms of how have these the recent historical impacts, like let's say the SARS pandemic of 2003, or the GFC of 2008, or even the highway ban of 2017, you'll find that big brands or large corporations find resilience. They are looking this not for the 1 or 2 years. We would certainly be looking at India with the next 10, 100 years in perspective. So I think this will continue to be an effort for us to carry on, get the brands back on track, get our people agenda fully up and running, whether with the office working or without the office working. And we're quite comfortable with that. But getting us in the larger picture from a 200-year-old legacy to continue for the next 200 years, I don't think anything changes at the moment.
As I said in my opening comment, that it's a difficult time and people are have limited fund available, and they are more focusing on the daily necessities than spending on so-called luxuries. The consumer has become very conscious about where it's spending money, and it's also looking for value for the money aspect. So in such a situation, are your high-end brands, which are slightly expensive than other brands, are affected somehow?
Yeah, we've been looking at trends, Mission, around the world. We've been looking at how the Indian economic activity has been impacted, or how potential recessionary trends, which categories seem to be facing more adversity or more slump or softness in demand. There are 2 or 3 ways to look at this. First of all, as consumers feel a little anxious about the future from a job or a disposable income, surely they will make choices in terms of what categories of brands will they continue to consume, and in which role or in which form does spirits take its place in that question. Once they choose to enjoy a drink responsibly, because I think that is important for every day, for us to keep our calm, etc., as we go, for consumers who prefer drinking, I think it's important that they have access to it. There we've seen 2 clear segments. There are consumers who have been exposed to, let's say, the duty free at the airports or the GTR, or they continue or they keep traveling, who we believe will be our target consumers from our Japanese whiskeys or the single malts. And they would have normally purchased their drinks or bottles at the airports. Now, they are not traveling for the last 3-4 months. And therefore, if they need to replenish their bar at home or have a small family occasion, etc., for a celebratory drink, they will continue to find what they need within the India retail. So I don't think that segment at all gets impacted at the moment. I think the demand continues to be high. And as we are seeing, like I mentioned, we had launched Roku Gin or Hibiki and Yamazaki in December. We are seeing some good depletions happening as we speak. For other consumers who are in, let's say, who normally consume a premium IMFL brand or Scotch, entry-level Scotch brand, etc., I think they will continue to size this situation on a very personal level. We haven't seen a drastic sentimental issue. I think it's more an access point issue, or just probably consumers going easy and taking as things evolve because of the on-premise being shut. So again, that's where the value equation comes in. But I feel very grateful and privileged that we have chosen to launch Oaksmith, which is our first foray into, as Beam Suntory, into Indian whiskey. And that's the price point which I think is going to be extremely critical going forward in the next few years, as the category rebounces, as the channels resume back at the on-premise or the bars, and once the GTR opens. So whether it is a high-end Japanese malt like Yamazaki, or it is a single malt like Bowmore, or a teacher's Highland cream, much loved Scotch, or the Indian whiskey with Oaksmith. I think Beam Suntory continues to be looking at all of these price points very carefully. They all are very strategic for us, and we will continue to evolve, see how consumer demand is evolving as we go.
So can you give us an audience a bit of an idea that during these last few months, which of your high-end brands like Baumol, Lefroy, Roku have been picked up by consumers from the retail wins, which are more appeal among the consumers? As you said, people are now buying for their home bars, etc. Which brands have been featured?
Yeah, I think all these brands you mentioned, whether it's Bomor or Lefroy or Ardmore in the single malls, Roku gin, which is a Japanese craft gin, and Hibiki and Yamazaki, I think they've all had extremely good depletions and purchases in the last after the opening of the trade, which was around the first week of May, because consumers by then had already looked at a 50-day lockdown, which was dry lockdown, and they were home. Teacher's Golden Thistle, our 12-year-old brand, which is our most premium, has seen extremely remarkable depletion progress in the last 2 months. It's a new brand. We only launched it in 2018, and we are very, very encouraged to see that. I would give a special mention to Roku Vision, because Roku, for the first time, came in the country. Roku was globally launched only as late as 2017, and this brand has been going strength to strength, just given its Japanese provenance and its craftsmanship heritage. Slightly different to a traditional London dry gin. This is Japanese gin, comes extremely flavorful. So as we were getting into the summertime, and I think consumers wanted to get a little more both creative in terms of DIY and cocktail making, and having a savoring moment at home, but also it was a refreshment occasion. So I think Roku I would call out particularly well, especially in markets where it's available now, like Gurgaon, Delhi, Mumbai, even Bangalore. Now it's on, soon to be in other markets. Has seen some very good depletion, but equally I was very surprised and happy to see consumers had strong demand for Yamazaki and Hibiki in the duty paid Indian outlets.
Okay.
For the first time available, but we've seen that move and move well.
Can you detail give us detail on Rokujin flavors, etc.?
Yeah.
And also which other markets you're going to launch? I think because you wanted to launch other markets as well.
Yeah,
but because held up.
Yeah, so Roku is fundamentally, it's an iconic new brand by Beam Suntory. Within Beam Suntory, we have a special umbrella of brands called House of Suntory, and House of Suntory would include brands like Hibiki, Yamazaki, and Hakushu, which are our primary premium whiskies. It would include Roku Gin, and then we've launched last year globally a few months ago a brand called Haku, which is vodka, and then we have
Hakushu is available in India?
No, not yet. And then we have a global new age whiskey, which is more, I would say, mainstream. It's called Toki. So these brands constitute what is called as a House of Suntory. Very, very artisanal, heavily crafted, comes with a lot of quality parameters. So Roku was created as one of the lead House of Suntory brands in gin, which has seen a massive renaissance around the world, especially in Europe, in America, in Asia as well. And Roku, if you know, basically in Japanese language would means the digit 6. So Roku is 6, and if you look at why 6, the whole craft of the brand has been, the bottle is shaped 6 sides. It has 6 Japanese special ingredients, which makes it interesting. It has, for example, yuzu. Yuzu fruit is like citrus, very popular Japanese citrus fruit. In fact, there are now mixers around the world which are getting created, like tonic, yuzu tonic, etc., which go well because it just adds a lot of refreshment to your drink. Roku contains pepper, Japanese pepper, like gyokoro sencha, tea, sakura flower, sakura fruit, So cherry. So I think all of these go on to make 6 very classic Japanese artisanal ingredients, and that's where the name comes from. And then of course there are multiple other ingredients which constitute in gin. And the way Roku has been built around the world is in a very traditional form because of the nature of these nice ingredients. Roku and soda itself could be a very nice way to drink it. You don't need tonic because the ingredients add that special kind of flavor to the drink. But of course, tonic and Roku is also as good, gin and tonic. We recommend, it's a very interesting Japanese ritual which follows as a perfect serve for Roku. And when I was in Singapore in my previous role, trying to build that with the Asian community was fascinating because people would just love the way it was being served in top bars of Singapore. For example, you would always go and pour the drink first with a friend of yours. That's a Japanese ritual, hospitality ritual. And therefore, you would pour Roku in a small cup, then have a tall glass which has gin, which has soda or tonic, depending on what you want, with ice, a lot of ice. And then I would pour for my companion would pour for me. So that is the way we would like this brand to get enjoyed as we go. So it's not just about the liquid in your lips, but it's also about the occasion which you apply, which you enjoy Roku. So this has seen very good traction. It has globally been progressing very well. And I think in India, we will see this brand grow for the future as well. It's a fascinating thing.
So we see a lot of new gin brands coming up in the market. As you rightly said, this kind of gin is also happening world over. India is also witnessing this growth. And a lot of Indian domestic gins have come up. Some of them pretty good. So in such a cluttered space now, consumers have a lot of choices as far as gin is concerned. How do you feel that Roku would find its place, rightful place in the Indian market, especially when it's a price a bit higher than the locally available gins?
Yeah, I think gin is a category of the future, first of all. And therefore, when you look at relative size and scale of this category in India, compared to the large, vast majority of whiskey brands in the country, I think gin is still very tiny. The second is traditionally in India, gin was either consumed as an afternoon drink on a Sunday from whatever trends we've picked up in the past, or it used to be a Bloody Mary ingredient, or and had a fairly, I would say, traditional occasion approach. Now, what's happening around the world, and also now picking up in India, when you go into bars in the Aerocity in Delhi or at Kamla Mills in Mumbai, and you see all the new age bartenders talking, gin is nothing as what it used to be. So I feel the more Indian brands come to activate this space with their craft, I think it's better and it's great for the category, first of all. So I welcome the brands which are making splashes from India. Secondly, gin used to be traditionally London dry gin space. But now there are, like international whiskies or international wine or new age whiskies, I think there are now trends of craft coming for gin beyond the traditional London dry gin. And of course, we have extremely good position with one of the most loved bartender gin from London, which is Sip Smith. So Sip Smith is a Beam Suntory brand, and that's our really delightful London dry gin. But then we have a Spanish Mediterranean gin, which is very citrusy, and that's called Larios. And then we have Roku from Japan, which is very artisanal and handcrafted Japanese gin. So the second piece, I would say, global trends, we are now looking for gin and mixology of gin beyond just the traditional space. So again, one of the reasons why brands which can continue to engage with consumers with different serve styles or mixology styles will be good for the category in India to evolve too. Lastly, why Roku? I think Roku comes uniquely with its provenance, with its heritage, and with its craft. If you talk to the chief blender of Roku, Tori-san, he would say it took them a lot of consumer insight to determine what are the flavors which consumers will still want to try and enjoy compared to what is out there already. It's not a new brand with a new brand name and having a similar liquid as what has been available. It's quite unique. Pricing wise, I think it is at the top end of good gins around the world. It's been featured in all the top lists. It competes with the best brands of gin. Therefore, I'm sure as we see evolution of price in whiskey, we will see evolution and acceptance of price in gin. So we are quite comfortable in the way the gin is positioned, the Roku gin is positioned, both in India and around the world.
So, Jim Beam has its EII variant.
Yeah.
So, after this lockdown was over, how is it doing? Can you share some sales and volumes?
Yeah.
And is it also available in CD or not? At CSD?
Right. No, Jim Beam at the moment is not available. It's available in all the big markets, the civil markets, but not in the CSD. So when we started bottling Jim Beam in India, Shalini, that was in 2014 around the time, I think that was a big step for us to signal, first of all, our commitment to grow bourbon and the largest selling bourbon in the world to consumers in India. Bourbon whiskey is quite versatile and different to Scotch, and I think the Indian palate and our love for Scotch has been long-standing. However, we see with the amount of exposure happening to large bourbon cities of the world, whether it's America, cities in America, or whether it's Germany or Sydney or in Australia, these are our large, big pockets of growth for Jim Beam. Indians and their exposure and their travel or family or just finding out from experiences or internet, I think the love for Jim Beam has continuously been growing. The fact that we have it in India bottled makes it very accessible at a good price point, so that works well for the brand. We've been growing double digits all through in the last 5 years, and as we opened up in the lockdown, during the lockdown, of course, Jim Beam was one of the main brands which took a pole position to engage with bartenders, because Jim Beam is indeed a very mixable drink. And we have a global bartending community platform called The Blend. And The Blend took a lot of effort to reach out. We have close to 1,000 bartenders already enrolled in the India chapter of The Blend, and Blend is global. They were all connected. We gave them lessons during the lockdown when the bars were shut. We gave them a program called Learn and Earn. So not only was it a learning program, but they could actually win and earn some money in that. So Jim Beam overall leads our bartending kind of community communications because it's the most relevant and it's the biggest of our portfolio in terms of that segment. Roku and some of our Japanese brands will soon obviously align with Jim Beam to be able to support with a more kind of larger portfolio, I think. We've launched Jim Beam Black last year in October, and that brand is now getting into its distribution. Jim Beam Black is a new bottle and a new packaging, is being really accepted. It's still very early days for Jim Beam Black though. But Jim Beam White continues to be in a strong trajectory of growth. It has a long way to go still compared to Scotch or compared to Teachers. But I think June was a good month for the reopening was a good time for both Teachers and Jim Beam.
As India is considered a youth country, I think bourbon is way to go.
Yeah. I think, but I see a lot of demand for bourbon whiskey coming through, and consumers want to have. I think it's not so much about bourbon or Scotch. I think it's just about different occasions in the way you drink it. Some whiskeys are sweeter, some whiskeys are smoky. So consumers are getting
it's a very easily mixable drink.
Yeah, very easily mixable, whether you mix it with a cocktail or you mix it with cola or you mix it with soda. On Jim Beam, one of the big activations globally we are on to, and certainly in India we've been partnering, is the Jim Beam Highball. And the Jim Beam Highball has been one of the singular most important source of growth for this brand in Asia, wherein Highball is really a tall glass with Jim Beam and very high carbonated soda with a dash of lemon. So very simple. It's exactly the way most Indians would drink their whiskey, which is soda and ice and whiskey. But here, the high quality carbonation of the soda plus the lemon and the way it is stirred and mixed, I think that makes a difference. So we've now kind of experimenting with the highball because we know that consumers love their drinks with soda. So will a highball be relevant, especially in a meal occasion when they're having finger food or having greasy or oily snacks or I think in the climate of India, I think it will be just that refreshing way to drink Jim Beam. So Jim Beam Highball clearly will be something we'll continue to focus on. We've partnered with the beer cafe across all their accounts in India over the last few months before the COVID shutdown happened, and you would find a refreshing Jim Beam Highball across most beer cafes in the country.
We'll have it today.
Let me know. I can give you a private, quick mixology tutorial on that.
You and your team must be missing these, activities we're doing at a lot of restaurants and bars in the country. And since all of the lockdown in home largely, so how do you reach out to your end consumers? Is the virtual space helping you to keep your brands relevant in the consumer's mind space? What are tools you're employing to reach out to targeted consumers during this time?
Yeah, more than us missing that space, of course, the brands are built at the on-premise, and our bartenders are the biggest champions we have. But I think we've been very concerned in terms of supporting that whole channel. First of all, I think as per the NRAI, which we partner with, and other such bodies of restaurants, bars, five-star hotels, standalone restaurants, all of it, there are multiple thousand, hundreds of thousands of people who are affected in the lockdown.
Absolutely.
And so our first call of action really was to engage with the key owners or the decision makers of such bodies. I personally attended multiple calls with the NRAI president and the other key members based in different parts of the country. We organized a few calls right in the first week of the pandemic because we knew this is going to be, the social distancing will mean the highest impact for consumption at the bars. So, and we realized quickly that it wasn't about, of course, there could be engagement and virtually you could be driving more things or educating bartenders. But in that first few days or weeks, it was really about their wages. So we rallied quickly to announce, I think we were amongst the first to announce a 1 crore pledge, which actually has gone out to more than 3,000 now bartenders together with some other companies who also participated so that it becomes a meaningful amount across the multiple thousand people employed. So that is the first, and we would hope and get back to, and then like I mentioned, the blend learn and earn program was another way to keep them engaged as well as supported. From a consumer perspective, to your question, how do our brands continue to live within the spaces and occasions of consumers? I think we've had a very busy summer, frankly, both in terms of finding or making ourselves ready for the reopening off trade as well as on trade, working together with other companies through the trade bodies to be able to find solutions and working with the regulators around starting home delivery. And a few states have already started, and we've been quite actively supporting and involved in that to be saying why it is probably the safest way to order, and you don't get people out on the streets, as well as it allows access to consumers when they need to replenish. And of course, consumers are getting all of the information on TV and other media to say what is the right balance to be had, both from a mental to managing their mental health, managing their health, etc. So I think that was the other piece in terms of just making that safety conditions with the both retail and on trade. Our brands have been active. I think Teachers and Jim Beam and Oaksmith plus Roku, all of the Bowmore, I think they've all had different roles to play to be staying connected. If I were to answer that in a different way, Vishen, what has been the impact or of the effort which the company and the staff has been doing in the last 3 months? I can only proudly say that in the month of June, as per Canadian market share data, which is where all of the companies subscribe mostly to, Teachers was the #1 scotch selling in the country, and
Okay.
for the month of June, which is a good indicator of the resilience of the brand, the importance of this brand for us, as well as the fact that consumers still go back to trusted brands, and that's kind of one of the main things I would like to call out. Secondly, I think overall, both right now, Oaksmith is just launched in 2 markets, Telangana and Maharashtra. In both the cases, we've seen extremely good traction. People love to drink, and I can talk a little bit about what is Oaksmith, but that was the other good effort and the success of that lockdown time. So yes, we are missing some of the what we call in Beam Suntory. We have a term called Gemba. Gemba is really a Japanese term, which is be where the value is created. So you can do a lot of desktop research, you could do a lot of board meetings or internal meetings, but really for a category like spirits, the action is out there at the bar. The bartender is who you're championing with and who's partnering you to kind of get your brands out there in the way it is supposed to be. So Gemba, whether it's on the shop floor, so rather than sitting in your room, in your factory, please go and walk on the shop floor and talk to the workers or the staff to see how value gets created. Gemba for a sales leader or a salesman is to go and talk to them in the bars or the retail restaurants. Gemba for a marketeer is to go and get out there and talk to consumers, whether by research means or just tap somebody on the shoulder in a bar and say, how are you liking this? Why are you drinking it with this and not this? Just getting that human connection going. So that has been the most missed activity for me personally and for my team, I'm sure. So the moment we have resumption of the on-premise, I mean, I would love to go back and see the trends which we have been discovering online or looking at expert bodies like BCG and McKinsey telling what is happening around the world. I mean, we would like to first time see that and experience that.
So there has been some learning for you, Neeraj, you are in team, because a lot of old devices, strategies may not seem relevant now. Even if everything opens up now, on-premise become active, restaurant bars are open. Do you think that there's some kind of tools will be kind of obsolete now?
Yeah.
You have to write a new set of rules now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would answer that in 2 parts. The first part, I think, long-standing trusted brands with very glorious heritage, they are such brands because of consistency. First of all, like I mentioned, Jim Beam, more than 200 years, Teachers coming to 200 years, other whiskeys, etc. So these are all very, very long. We are just custodians of these brands over their journey of hundreds of years or continuing journey. So when brands need to get or to need to address disruptions, either they would evolve in the way they approach the channel or the consumer or the customer, or they may evolve to be able to fundamentally change their DNA. And I come from the school of thought where the DNA doesn't need to change. I think these brands are trusted because of the consistency. Surely agility of learning new things and what's happening out there, using that learning to quickly execute or implement those, I think is the key. If you would not do that, you would not survive. So staying contemporary, preserving the DNA, and developing learning agility to implement quick actions based on change is probably what I would recommend our teams to do, and generally to every budding marketer out there. Because just because of 1 year, and then I guess different businesses will view it differently. If you're a startup, maybe it's an existential crisis. If you're shut down for 3 months, and that could be a very different approach. But for long historical heritage-led brands, I think the belief in the brands, the scalability of the brands offers you some perspective in which you can choose to work. Coming to your second point, what is changing? Surely things are changing. The channel landscape is changing. So, a big part of the channel is shut now for 4 months. Doesn't look likely to be opening in the next couple of weeks at least. So working together in terms of what will make consumer sentiment stronger to be able to come back into bars, order the drink. We're already seeing a lot of that work happening in other markets like Spain or China, and I'm in constant touch with our MDs in those markets to say what is happening. There have been instances where things were open, and the retailers or the especially the bars were waiting for consumers to come, but consumers were not coming or not feeling confident to come. We've done a research in India already to say when things open up, how long do you think you'll take to get back to a bar, to your favorite bar? Is it in a week of opening? Is it in a month of opening? Is it in 3 months of opening or 6 months of opening? And a majority, 50% of consumers have said, excuse me, between 1 month, between a week and a month, they would see and understand. So we're waiting for that. And I don't think our job is to push people to go out. If they're not comfortable, they should be finding the drink. So how do you therefore get access, both in the terms of the route to market, and home delivery was a great outcome of that. And then once you have access, how do you keep your brand top of mind as a marketer is the other challenge. And therefore you are obviously using remote ways of doing it. The outcome of that in a share or whatever else probably is a good way to see if that has been successful. Lastly, there will be technology and digital interventions or even robotic intervention, which
That's
will
extremely important. Yeah.
yes. So how a bar owner is able to be transparent about the way they are serving the drink or creating the drink or even serving food or creating food, the use of robots and robotics probably getting experimented, or just the fact that you have the face shields or the plastic shields between spaces in a restaurant. I think these are all real considerations as we go. And I think as a large company globally and with a lot of interest of our customers at heart and at hand, we will continue to support that space. So I think channel delivery, the way cocktails should be made, and maybe as we've seen so much interest in food and culinary skills in the lockdown, we have also seen a lot of do-it-yourself skills. I'm very happy that a lot of bars are getting DIY kits out there where, of course, consumers buy their own drinks, but at least they can give the mixers. So these are all probably elements of the new normal. But the DNA of how we participate in that new normal, I think, will be changing less. I think our actions or touch points may be changing more.
As you said that Oak Smith is right now available in Maharashtra and Telangana. So what are your plans for Oak Smith? I personally feel attached with Oak Smith. Yeah, I haven't tasted, but I like to taste it, and I like more about Oak Smith.
Yeah. And Oxford has been such an incredible story for us, Shalini. I think I hope that we find an occasion, and you find an occasion quickly to have a taste of this, both from as part of the community as well as from your lens as an editor. But Oaksmith really came into existence because when we look at the Indian market, clearly the majority of the consumption is in the whiskey space, and with our whiskey, really very, very strong positions across any form of whiskey in the world, whether it's Canadian or it's American bourbon or it's Spanish whiskey with DYC, or it's Japanese whiskey with our large brands in Japan, or single malts in Scotland, or Irish whiskey. I think the one significant market which we did not have a fully, I would say, consumer insight-led developed product offering was India. And with the largest market of consumption for whiskey being India, I think our shareholder and our leaderships globally are very, very supportive and committed to create, a brand and a product and an offer which works well for Indian palate, for Indians, but can bring around the best of the best in terms of how it's gets created. And Beam Suntory comes with a unique class, I would say. We are amongst the few who can bring in and blend the best of East and the best of West. We are at the end, a lot of our brands are Western, but equally the quality consciousness. We have a term called monozukuri, which is high quality at every standard of production or blending or all the processes. Our Japanese blenders, the founder of Suntory Group, they're so heavily preservers of quality. So East meets West was one of the key themes in the way Oaksmith got created. Last February in 2019, we didn't have the brand name, we didn't have any bottle design, had no liquid. There was a massive level of consumer insight work, which we all were involved with. The chief blender of Suntory Group, Shinji Fukuyo, made 6 trips incognito trips in the last year to India, to be talking to, I've personally been with him to ahatas in Lucknow, to small bars and nip places in Mumbai and Pune and Hyderabad. So he's traveled the length and breadth of the company to understand what is it that if a new brand comes alive in India, what do consumers want? What are they missing today from some of the best brands or large brands which we already have from the competition? So we understood consumers are looking for cake. Now he just didn't understand what is a cake. What is cake about one glass and you drink it the first sip or the first glass or the first bottle or the next day hangover. Things which we take for granted in India is quite difficult to understand for people
We
outside.
know what is cake.
Yeah.
You understand.
And then how do consumers in India drink? Because we have this sequencing, right? Typically you would drink in the evening, have some heavy snack with the drink, and then you would stop drinking and go for dinner, which is very different to global sequencing, which is you would have an early dinner, have a night out or drink, and then probably go for a supper, and then so all of that. So what are those flavors which will work well with Indian food, vegetarian, non-vegetarian? What is a cake? What is the right level? What is the color? So that all happened in that course of 9 months. And the reason I'm just telling the story is how important we take our consumer insight work or Gemba or quality. So Oaksmith got created with that feel. It is an important priority for us, for the foreseeable future to build this. When we launched it, it was one of the first forays from us in the Indian space, Indian whiskey space. So Maharashtra, Telangana, we had launch conferences in both the markets. We had one in Bombay, we had one in Mumbai, we had in Pune, and then we had in Hyderabad. Customers were delighted because they could see the quality. They really loved the bottle and the packaging. The name itself had a good international ring, but yet was created with the Indian palate in mind. We've now started to see Oaksmith already appear on the share map, on the share position. So still very early days, but extremely good feedback from consumers, customers, as well as the entire ecosystem, I would think. We were originally only in 6 cities. We're moving that into multiple cities in those 2 states. And later in this year, we'll be launching in one more state. And given the promising feedback already, and this year was meant to be a pilot, we've already taken a decision to expand it into multiple states next year. So you'll see more of it around. The price point has been accepted very well. There are 2 variants. Oaksmith Gold is the premium variant, and Oaksmith International is the value variant, and both are seen top class in their segments, both in packaging and liquid form. So I'm really encouraged with Oaksmith's development process, which was remarkable in 9 months, from nothing to having the brand out there and going through the registration cycles and all of that. The teams have done an excellent job. And I'm also extremely excited to see the acceptance of this brand.
We're very happy to see Oaksmith in Delhi very soon. And I would like to ask Neeraj, as a young, dynamic India of Beam Suntory India, what does Neeraj love to drink? He wants to unwind at home. Like to give my example, I love to share my single malts from a space side with my friends. But actually, I want to enjoy an evening with Shalini, with some nice ghazal crooning in the background. I go for some Isla malt. So what's your favorite poison when you want to unwind?
And company also.
And company also. You know which company I enjoy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's all about repertoire, right? I think in the business of spirits, there is no favorite, is my view. I think there are repertoires, and occasion makes all the
occasions.
Yeah. So like you rightly said, in those occasions when you're in a savoring moment, I think a Lafroig would go very well. And that's something which would be up there for me. But equally, I think the Roku gin makes itself so versatile and so easy and so refreshing, and that makes whether it's a afternoon or a evening, I think it's a fantastic gin. So that is the other favorite. And then, of course, the social occasions, the larger occasions or events we do, etc. Teachers continues to be very relevant. Teachers Golden Thistle and an outstanding blend, 12 years old. And Vision, for you, I think it's an interesting one because it is not only matured or created like a 12-year-old with the right quality malts, but it is finished. The maturation is finished in Isla cask, so it's got a bit of both. So if you haven't, you should certainly try the Teacher's Golden Thistle.
Which one?
The
Golden
Teacher's
Thistle. We have tried once.
Ones I tried.
Yeah, so that is that's got very good traction as well. So between teachers, Lefroy and Gin, I would think I would answer that question. I'm waiting for Oaksmith to be available in the place I live. Once that comes through, more.
We'll have to raid your house one.
Then let's have together. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Charlie, I can tell you.
So, as there is no on-premise sales and marketing happening, right? It's still time out there. So, how are you handling the brand recall in consumers' mind? Don't you think this is the right time to be present in the consumer's mind, so that once this is available on-premise, they would go in, immediately for it, for your brands?
Yeah. So, for 55 days or 60 days of the lockdown, it was the same question, not just related to on-premise, but even related to off-premise, because even retail was shut, right? How do you stay consistently within minds of consumers? Because when they have such a pent-up demand, which they're not able to buy, how do you go? I think it's two parts. One, what is the when things resume, how do you become relevant or get into consumer considerations? I think that's one part of the question. The second is on a longer term continuous basis. How are you going about keeping the brands alive and in a healthy manner, building those brands? I think that's the other part. It's not so tactical of just 3 months or 2 months. So with on-premise shut, obviously a lot of the channel activation work couldn't be done. We went and engaged on that with the enablers of that channel with other bartenders. So the blend was extremely active to be able to engage with many hundreds of bartenders in India who are top of the line. Right in the beginning, we created a mentorship program where we got in renowned Indian names like Shakti Basu, Young Diploma. We have the blend is in India is managed by one of the best bartenders who is working with us now. He's part of the Suntory group, Rohan, and then with Vikram. So a lot of those enablers or mentors of the industry came together on behalf of Beam Suntory and started to engage with bartenders to keep them calm, etc. I think that, to me, is a very important element, because those people, when they go back to the bars, will always remember that. So that's one. From a consumer perspective, of course, we've been engaging in across different types of promotions or activations, which can lead into keeping the brand up and alive in their homes through platforms or other things. And I think that will be a big way to keep the brand top of mind. And Teachers, Oaksmith, some of our other global brands in their global social media handles, etc., continue to do that. And I think that is adequately covered, I think. We work, Shalini, on a model of touch points. So we determine which are the most important touch points for the consumer. And there could be many, many hundreds of touch points, right from the label of the bottle all the way to television. There are multiple touch points which a consumer basically interacts on a day-to-day basis. So some touch points are about awareness, and some are more stronger in terms of trials, and some are stronger in terms of purchase inducement, etc. So that model, we've been very close and following that with integrity to say which are those touch points, especially in this world, in the COVID world, which is going to be a little more maybe different or relevant. And we continue to double down on those touch points and keep them front and center. So that's kind of what we are trying to do at the moment. And once the bars open back, we will, like Rajasthan today is the only market where we have bars open, as in consumers can go up to 9 p.m. and actually have a drink. When they open some of the key bars there, we went ahead there with a care pack. So we've created a care pack, which is just a way to welcome them back. It's a belief in the partnership. So we just, a care pack is something we're engaging with. So I think while the brand is talking to consumers, I think we have invested to make sure that we're talking to customers and the staff who will become later also our primary partners. And we're very, that is a critical chain for us.
Yeah, Neeraj, my last question. This time is difficult, but this too shall pass. So, but you always see from your beautiful narratives, beautiful explanations you have given for brands and your vision. What do you think? Where do you want to take this company in next 5 years? What's your vision for the company? What's your next goalpost?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. I think we've been quite transparent, Vision, on trying to declare what our vision is, not just for 5 years, but for the next 10 years. One of the key elements of the Beam Suntory growth for India is building, I would say our top-notch objective is to get 1 billion smiles on the back of our brands. I think that's really the if I were to look back at the shareholder vision, I think they don't count dollars or sales numbers, but they count the number of consumers who feel delighted with the portfolio. And the Suntory Group is diversified. It's not just into spirits. We have long relationships where we manage business for PepsiCo, and we have the PepsiCo bottler, and we have ice cream, Häagen-Dazs in Japan, one of the biggest brands of coffee in Southeast Asia and Indonesia, in Japan, called Boss Coffee. That's Suntory. So it's a very diversified group. That is now becoming, India is now becoming one of the most important priority markets, just given, of course, our demographic dividend, but also in terms of the proximity and the center of gravity shifting to east as things go in the future, with the age groups and all of that. So there is a strong commitment from the group to be focusing on growing India. We've been late in India to grow. That's part one. Part two is Beam Suntory and our very powerhouse portfolio of brands offers a lot of value for consumers in India. Whether it is the high end with the Japanese whiskies, or with the Teachers, which is the much loved brand in India, or now with Oaksmith, which is going to be setting up scale for us. So I would really, at the moment, we're busy building capability. We're building capability in people. We're building capability in processes. We're using technology and IT to be more sophisticated, or in terms of how we build commercial excellence in our sales organization. So that's kind of the other big piece. The third is we are building capacity. We've had traditionally, our own plant, and we had a few co-packing relationships. But with all of these new brands coming through, we would like to have capacity, and therefore that's the other piece in terms of how do we get that high quality capacity in India going. So this will itself be, it's a great time for anybody to be in Beam Suntory, to be able to be participating in this journey. And I'm just in this space, kind of joining the dots, making sure that we are getting the attention we need as a market. We are continuing to focus in doing the business the right way, the Beam Suntory way when we approach India. And our brands are out there for the quality they deserve to. So 2030, we have $1 billion NSV ambition, and that ambition will mean, multifold growth. But I think we've focused in the last couple of years to be able to declare that ambition, to get the enablers of that ambition, and their brands and capacity and commercial excellence as some of the enablers, but people will become the most important. So how do we get the right people, and how do we skill our people more? I think that's kind of the other part which I enjoy working on. So it's an important phase for India, the Beam Suntory India within the global structure. But it's also, I think, an exciting phase for every employee in India as we look at India with a defined 10-year vision, which is really a privilege in these days, because not many companies can think 10 years and go with a concerted plan.
So as you are building new capacities, can we expect more India-made brands in the coming months?
Yeah, I think we have our hands full at the moment with some really significant priorities already. Oaksmith continues to be, but as things evolve and more with Oaksmith and other areas, or if there are gaps we find, both from our growth as well as in the market, certainly I think we are in this for the long haul.
So there is hope.
Great.
Thank you, Neeraj, for being with us and discussing your vision, your future plans and brands with us, and all the very best.
Wish you all the best, Neeraj, for your future
Thank you.
endeavors.
Thank you.
We
Thank
hope
you
to
for
see
having
you
me.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.